Another thing that we have to talk about before we start talking about writing number 1 and writing number 2 specifically is coherence. Coherence is another criteria which is super important for both of your essays. That is why we need to work on coherence. What is coherence? Coherence is how well developed and how logical is your text. Of course, you remember from the reading section that the logic of the English text is very important. We always have the topic sentences at the beginning of the paragraphs, and we have a thesis statement at the end of the introduction. This coherence of an English text was very convenient for us in the reading section. Now, we also need to implement coherence in our writing. So let's have a look at the coherence of the English text and revise this knowledge for ourselves. This way, we can always write coherently and then get very good scores for our writings. So this is the basic structure of an English text. Let's have a closer look. We start every text with an introduction. And the introduction usually has some sentences which are not that important, and then it has a very important sentence, which is going to be the last sentence of the introduction, which is a thesis statement. So here in this fake introduction, we have 3 sentences. The first one, this is just the first sentence of the introduction. The second one, this is just the second sentence of the introduction. And then the last one is the most important one. This is thesis, the last sentence of the introduction and the most important sentence of the text. So we remember that the last sentence of the introduction is our thesis, is our main idea. Then we come to paragraph number 1. And of course we remember that the first sentence of each paragraph is the most important sentence of this paragraph. So the first sentence of the paragraph has 2 goals. Goal number 1, it supports the thesis, and goal number 2, it integrates everything that will be said later in the paragraph. So it unites all the ideas, all the details, all the examples which are going to happen here in this paragraph. It's kind of a title, the main idea of the paragraph. So let's have a look at this fake paragraph. This is the first sentence of the first paragraph, which, number 1, supports the thesis, and number 2, integrates everything that will be said later in the paragraph. This is the second sentence of the paragraph that supports the first one. This is the third sentence of the paragraph, which continues the idea from the second one and supports the idea of the first one. So you see, there also has to be the connection between the sentences. The sentence number 3 follows logically from the sentence number 2 and also supports sentence number 1. This is the fourth sentence of the paragraph, which continues the idea from the third one and supports the idea of the first one. Okay? So again, we have transitions, we have logical connections between sentences, but also every sentence supports the first sentence. All right, let's move to paragraph number 2, and here we have the very same thing. The first sentence of this paragraph is the most important sentence of this paragraph, which has now 3 goals. Number 1, it supports the thesis again, so this sentence supports this sentence, okay? Number 2, it is logically related to the previous paragraph by a transition. So it's very important that we have a transition in this sentence. For example, we can say second, right? If the first paragraph began with the transition first, we can say second, so that this paragraph logically follows the first paragraph. Or we can, for example, say on the other hand, or we can say consequently, something like that. So we use a transition which states the logical connection between paragraph number 1 and paragraph number 2. The goal number 3 of this sentence is it combines everything that will be said later in the paragraph. So again, this is kind of a title, the main idea of all the examples and details which will follow in this paragraph. Then we have pretty much the same thing which we had in the paragraph number 1. This is the second sentence of the paragraph that supports the first one. This is the third sentence of the paragraph which continues the idea from the second one and supports the idea of the first one. This is the fourth sentence of the paragraph which continues the idea from the third one and supports the idea of the first one. So all the sentences within the paragraph are connected very closely, they follow each other, and then all of them support the first sentence of this paragraph, the topic sentence, this bold sentence of this paragraph number 2. Now we come to the conclusion, finally. And here, again, the first sentence is the most important sentence of the conclusion. This is the first sentence of the conclusion, which has 2 goals. Number 1, it paraphrases the main idea, which is a thesis from the last sentence of the introduction. So in the conclusion, we paraphrase this last sentence. We paraphrase the thesis, okay? So here we have the paraphrase of the thesis. And number 2, it paraphrases the main arguments, which means the first sentences of the paragraphs. So in this sentence, we paraphrase all the important sentences. We paraphrase the thesis, and then we paraphrase all these topic sentences. Topic sentence number 1, topic sentence number 2. Okay? So here we paraphrase the thesis and the main arguments, which were, of course, in the first sentences of the paragraphs. Okay, so after we did this very important job, we then add some extra sentences to the conclusion. This is the second sentence of the conclusion, which adds something insignificant. This is the first sentence of the conclusion, which adds something else insignificant and completes the entire text. So 2 more sentences are not that important, it's just the additional sentences so that we can close our text. Okay, so this is the structure of a coherent text. And in every writing that you do for the TOEFL test, and ideally for any English writing whatsoever, you should use this structure. Let's have a look at another thing which adds coherence to our text. It is transitions. So the transitions are those words which help us connect the sentences with each other. For example, we have these 2 sentences. In my physics class, we did lots of experiments that helped clarify scientific principles. I understood those principles better by doing those experiments. So here it is better for us to use a transition, which can actually help us to make these 2 sentences shorter and also make it better connected. Let's have a look at this example. In my physics class, we did lots of experiments that helped clarify scientific principles. As a result, I understood those principles better. So in this case, our sentences are shorter and also they are well connected. In order for you to practice the transitions, we have a lot of exercises in the resources. We have a list of transitions which you can learn, and then we have the exercises which can help you practice the transitions. Using transitions is crucial for your writing score, so go ahead and do those exercises and learn or revise those transitions because it's very important for you to know them. Another thing which can help you with your cohesion is adding cohesion in your sentences by changing the nouns to the pronouns, so that you don't have to repeat a noun over and over again, but you can just replace it with a pronoun. This makes your text coherent because it actually connects the sentences to each other. Let's have a look. I have always wanted to see Old Faithful Geyser in Yellowstone National Park. Besides the Old Faithful Geyser, vast wilderness areas can be found in Yellowstone National Park. Interesting wildlife inhabits the vast wilderness areas. The interesting wildlife found in Yellowstone National Park includes bison, moose, elk, and bears. So we see here that some of the words are repeated several times. We see that Old Faithful Geyser, which is green, is repeated twice. Yellowstone National Park, which I marked yellow because it's Yellowstone, is repeated 3 times. Interesting wildlife is repeated 2 times, and then vast wilderness areas is repeated twice. So of course we want to avoid this repetition, and we do so by replacing these words with pronouns. So let's have a look. We already have Old Faithful Geyser, so instead of repeating it, we're just going to write this geyser. Besides this geyser, sounds perfect. Okay, so we already have Yellowstone National Park, so here, instead of repeating it, we're going to write there. Besides this geyser, vast wilderness areas can be found there. Now, we already have vast wilderness areas, they were here, so that's why we replace it with these areas. Interesting wildlife inhabits these areas. Now, we already have interesting wildlife here, so we need to replace it here by wild animals. Wild animals found in Yellowstone National Park includes bison, moose, elk, and bears. Now here, the Yellowstone National Park is repeated again, and we want to replace it with the park. Wild animals found in the park, because we already know what park we're talking about, includes bison, moose, elk, and bears. So now this text is coherent. We added a lot of cohesion to it by replacing the words with pronouns. So this is how you work on cohesion of your text. You make sure that the text is well developed by putting the thesis statement where it should be and putting the topic sentences where it should be, and also by writing a conclusion which rephrases the thesis statement and the topic sentences. You also use transitions with your text, and you can find the list of transitions as well as the exercises in the resources to this video. Also, you add cohesion by replacing the nouns with the pronouns. This makes your sentences connected and shorter. And of course, in the resources, we have exercises which can help you to practice all of these things and improve the overall cohesion of your writing. So go ahead, do these exercises as well, and I will see you on the next video where we will finally go to discussing writing number 1. Thanks for watching.